Declan Rice, Roy Keane, Patrick Vieira. Obviously, at the top, they've played more games, more experience. But we look at the number of goals and the assists here. The big thing is games per goal or assist. So right now, Declan Rice, over 10 games where he's involved in a goal. Roy Keane, Patrick Vieira, obviously, they've cut that in half. Now, he's playing for West Ham, a defensive team, and he's the holding midfield player in that team. These two players, when they were in the pomp, were playing for the two best teams in the country. The reason I chose them two players, because I don't think I would describe them as real attacking players or defensive players. I would class them as an all-round midfield player. And I think the role now for Declan Rice does feel like an all-round midfield player. Will it be deep at times? He will have licence to get into the box. And that number has to be cut in half at least. And we saw evidence of that in the first game, that he got the chances. Now he's got to be able to take them and finish.
Surely, Karen, as well, he's still a young player. In this environment, in different training, with a different manager, he's going to expect a lot more from him in that end of the pitch. You would expect him to improve, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you'd expect so. And like James is playing for the better team. But I think that's why I was asking about playing against deeper teams, because he's asking potentially in the first couple of clips you showed there, Jamie, he's going into number 10 positions where you aerially got to be very, very different. The last few clips, he started deeper and running in late. I think that would be better for Declan Rice, and I think he'll get more goals and assists from running in a little bit later. When he's in those higher areas where it's congested, I don't think that's natural to him. What
do you think, Gary? Is he capable of getting to those numbers?
He may do. He may get there. I mean, look, Roy's career at Manchester United was probably split into two parts when he first joined, and he had Paul Ince alongside him, and he could go forward. He'd run past strikers, and he did it really well. Declan Rice is never going to get to that level of how Roy Keane was early in his career. And then when you flip to the end of Roy Keane's career, he was alongside Paul Scholes, who was the attacking midfield player, so Roy sat a lot more. I mean, you've asked Mikel Arteta a question tonight, what kind of midfield player do you see him as? Because the reason we asked the question about goals is because he's not that player that goes and receives it like Pirlo or Busquets off the back four and turns and sort of, if you like, sets up the play. He's not a midfield player who's a number 8 who scores loads of goals. So you're asking yourself that question, what kind of midfield player is he?
What do you think he is? You've seen him enough.
No, last week when I chose him as the one to watch and the one that I felt could have a big impact on the season, what I think he brings to Arsenal's midfield is power, personality and physicality. Essien brought that to Chelsea. I think that would, for me, be a better example of what I see him as. Makelele was the defender, Lampard was the goals, and Essien, and this is not a criticism, by the way, Essien was a brilliant player. I loved him at Chelsea, thought he was outstanding, but he was the power, he was a force in there for 3 or 4 years. And for me, I see him more as an Essien. I wouldn't put him personally in the category of Keane and Vieira. I just think they were so special as midfield players. I don't think Declan is anywhere near that level yet, but he can be a power and influence and a force.
Gary,
you're talking about him not being at that level. Roy Keane actually broke the British transfer record. He's now obviously done that, the transfer record. So you're basically saying he shouldn't be worth that much money. The player you're describing doesn't sound to me like he's a player who should be worth over 100 million.
No, I've always said that I felt, look, the market shifted towards 100 million. I've always found it difficult around 100 million for Declan Rice. But then when I say Caicedo going for 100 million, maybe that's where the market shifted to. For me, 100 million, I think you want goals, assists, you want that attacking end of the pitch sorting out. But however, the last 6 months has completely changed our perception on midfield players' values. But I think, you mentioned Roy Keane and Vieira. I personally think they're two of the greatest midfield players we've seen in British football. And I don't think Declan Rice is in that category. You know, I think...
I'm talking about in terms of actually, can he get their numbers? Because their numbers are not sort of Lampard, Gerrard. They're completely different midfield players. Declan Rice is a player who could play the holding role. We've seen that in the past for England and West Ham. His manager now is asking him to play more attacking. He's playing for one of the top teams in the country. We've seen the chances that he got. Could he got those goal-scoring numbers higher?
Forget goals. Where I would want to see Declan Rice come to life for Arsenal, the 10 games to go, the sprint finish of a Premier League season, where last season they had nowhere near enough, and I never thought they did. I think he could be in that period the man who gives them that sort of those shoulders, that sort of, he gives them that power and that physical presence to get them through that sort of mire of the last 10 games.
You mentioned the physical presence there. Do you think Arteta's gone for that because of how City have evolved in terms of bringing that physicality? 4 big centre-backs, Haaland. Do you think he's had to go, I need Havertz, I need Declan, I need some of that in my team?
Yeah, whilst the rest of them are still talking about Pep Guardiola and splitting full-backs, Pep's moved on to a 4-4-2 with the biggest centre-forward looks like an absolute monster. You've got 4 back 4 players that are 6'3", 2 holding midfield players in Kovacic and Rodri, who, to be fair, are fantastic in terms of positional sense. Grealish, who's got the biggest calves I've ever seen on the wing, and Foden, to be fair, who's a bit smaller. He's devolved his team into something that's so British in terms of its appearance, yet they've still got great technical ability. So I think you need power in this league to take on this Manchester City team, and Arsenal didn't have that with 10 games to go. They fell short.